Alright, so what we have here is a game called Retro Game Quest for the Atari 2600. So before you say, hey, this game looks like crap, just know that I am playing this on real Atari 2600 hardware, upscaled through a RetroTink, but I'm also running an RF through a VCR to get to that RetroTink. You might say, hey, use an emulator, but you know what? This game is cartridge only. Anyway, I know we haven't really dove into Atari 2600 on this channel very much. However, the console was very influential to me. I never did own one growing up, but all of my friends had one. I had an Odyssey 2, which was a great system, by the way. However, that meant I would go to my friend's house often and play their Atari 2600. And I always had a blast doing it. But you're not here to hear about that. You're here to hear about Retro Game Quest. This is a game programmed by Jason Santucci. And in this game, the protagonist is video game collector YouTuber John Hancock, aka the immortal John Hancock. So the synopsis of this game is that ghosts have strewn John's 8 rarest game carts across the kingdom. John puts a beanie helicopter on his head and occasionally flies around in order to collect the games and put the games back into their respective consoles. Now you have to accomplish this before the timer runs out, and the timer runs out when it reaches 41. There's 3 different game modes to this. Game mode 1 is a small overworld that contains each cart only a few screens away from its console. Now game 2 is a larger overworld, and the carts and consoles are in varied locations. And then game 3 is a more randomized version of the game. But since I'm a beginner at this game, I've just been playing game 1. So basically you're moving the joystick around, and you're controlling John through the kingdom, while your beanie copter randomly moves you around at just certain intervals. It's seriously random. You have no control over this at all. Now every so often, the display timer will turn purple, and you can push the fire button, which will help you fly past walls and generally move faster. You collect these 8 different carts, and once you pick one up, you're stuck with it until you find the console it goes in. Once you find the empty console, you put the cart in it, the console door closes, and you go find the next cartridge. Once you get all 8, you win the game. However, if you don't collect all 8, by the time the timer reaches 41, the game is over, and your cartridge explodes. Now the instructions say that 3 ghosts haunt this land, and I guess they do kind of look like ghosts. At first, I thought they were turd monsters. I know, get your head out of the gutter. Anyhow, what these ghosts do is they nab you up and then drop you in a random place on the map. Now this kind of reminds me of E.T. for the Atari 2600, except when you're captured in that, they don't take you to a random place. You go back to the same place on the map every time. But if you've played E.T., I would say this game is probably inspired by that game, which by the way, E.T. isn't that awful of a game. Once you really learn the controls and understand how to play it, it's not that bad, especially for Atari 2600. But I digress. That's going to be a hard game to convince anybody that it's worth taking a second look. Now, normally in my reviews, I talk about things like graphics, play control, music, but how do you do that with an Atari 2600 game? There is a little music in this. The opening screen has a theme song. But like most Atari 2600 games, there's not a lot of background music to be had. There are some sounds, and they sound very Atari 2600. The graphics are decent for an Atari game. You can tell that John's character is a human. You can tell that these are supposed to be NES cartridges and NES consoles. Heck, you can even tell this is supposed to be water you're traveling over. So I would say the graphics are functional, which is about all you can ask for an Atari 2600 game. The play control, it's fairly similar to E.T. You can move up, down, left, and right, and at certain times you can hold down the button and speed up, flying over obstacles even. That's a very similar control scheme to E.T. Although E.T. wasn't flying over obstacles, E.T.'s just flying to get out of the pits that he falls into a lot. No pits in this game though. So would I recommend this game? I think if you're an Atari 2600 fan and you're looking for something fun and a little bit different, I would try to pick one of these up. However, I don't know if you can still. You see, I got this cartridge meeting John briefly at a convention, and that's where he's selling them. And as far as I know, that's the only place to get them is through John Hancock. So if you see John out at a convention, or maybe selling some of these online, it's not a bad pickup. One of the reasons I wanted to do this video was because after I picked this up from John, I was dying to see what this game was about, and I could not find a video for it anywhere on YouTube. And I remember asking John about it, and he kind of downplayed it as far as like the gameplay goes and kind of talked it up as more of a collectible. But I think he really was downplaying it. I think it's a fairly decent game for your 2600. So anyway, I hope you got some use out of this video. It's kind of neat to see a new 2600 game here in 2022. Who knew we'd be this far into things and still have 2600 games coming out? But what do you think? Do you have an Atari 2600? Does anybody out there still play it? Or is it just me? I know you're out there. So sound off down in the comments below. Let me know your favorite 2600 game. If you want to see more videos on the Atari 2600, let me know. In the meantime, we've got a ton of videos for you to watch. Most of it's retro stuff. And I appreciate you watching. So until next time, see you soon.